quick review here of animism and anthropomorphism. And to do it, besides doing the boring, go through the vocabulary definitions, I'm going to wrap this review of that concept, those two concepts, around a story of a kid named Phaethon. Now, once again, animism and anthropomorphism. Animism simply means recognizing a powerful force, object, whatever, as a god. And that's all, okay? There's no worship involved, no sacrifices, no prayers. It's just God. Okay. Anthropomorphism or God, pointing at the earth. What would we call the brown stuff we walk around on? That's powerful, okay? Well, we could call it dirt, or we could be a little bit more respectful and call it earth, okay? What do we call the sky that starts over there and ends over there? We call that sky, okay? What do we call the big round ball of heat and warmth and light that we see up in the sky? We call that sun. Okay. You can spot these animistic gods very quickly because usually their names are what they are. The name of the sun is sun. The name of the sky is sky. The name of the storm god is storm. Okay. Anthropomorphism is when we begin to apply human characteristics to those gods, to ascribe them things like anger, or bravery, or whatever. And we talk about the relationships between them. Okay. Well, let's stick with the sun. I'm going to tell you a story about a grandfather, a father, and a son. We'll start off with Hyperion. All right. Hyperion is one of the second generation gods. He's the son of Gaia, who is the earth, and Uranus, who is the sky. The earth and the sky have some sort of erotic relationship. Obviously, we aren't talking about human sexual reproduction, okay? But they have some type of sexual relationship and are born a series of gods called the Titans. And these are also animistic gods, okay? Hyperion's name just simply is a reference to the sun. Hyper means over or above. If you're hyperactive, that means you're overly active. Probably just means you're just being a normal kid, but that's what somebody's going to call you, okay? Because you're overly active. If you have hypertension in your blood pressure, that means your blood tension is over a certain number. And Hyperion is just a Greek word that means something that goes, all right? And so the sun literally means the thing that goes over the earth. Now, there are not very many stories about Hyperion. The sun has some sort of sexual relationship. Obviously, think about the sun. We're not talking about human sexual reproduction. With one of his sisters. I know that's gross. Limited gene pool. Okay. And here we see what usually happens when anthropomorphism catches on. Usually we have a story about how one of the animistic gods, who really doesn't have much personality or, doesn't really like things or get angry about things, but produces another son, or another child, in this case a son. Helios, which is an Indo-European, comes from an Indo-European root that means son, all right? So both these names mean son in different ways of getting to the word. But these third generation gods, you see, are anthropomorphic. In other words, when you think about what Hyperion looks like, you don't have to think too hard. All you got to do is look up for just a quick second and catch a glimpse of what the sun looks like. Well, that's what Hyperion looks like, because Hyperion is the sun. Okay. Helios, though, if you want to know what Helios looks like, Helios is a personification of the sun. We might think of him as being kind of like a human being, okay? In fact, if we were going to draw a picture of Helios, we would draw him as a human being, okay? Helios rides around in a chariot, and somehow when he rides around in his chariot, wherever he goes in his chariot, the sun follows with him. Now, we have all kinds of stories about Helios, okay? Whoops, sorry about that. Oh, my little stand there. We have all kinds of stories about Helios, all right? He works hard every day. Every day he has to drive the sun, his father, Hyperion, around in some way that copies whatever his chariot is doing. Okay. So all day long he is busy flying his chariot. All night long he is seducing various female spirits and gods and all kinds of creatures we'll be talking about next week. One of these is a young nymph named Clymene. She lives in the waters just off the coast of Ethiopia. Helios and Clymene only hook up once. They have a one-night stand, but that's enough for Clymene to become pregnant and give birth to a kid named Phaethon. Phaethon goes to school in Ethiopia. He lives in a town in Ethiopia. All the kids at school say, you don't know who your daddy is. Who's your daddy? You don't know who your daddy is. And so one day, Phaethon goes to Clymene and says, Mom, who's my dad? And Clymene says, well, your father is Helios. He's the one of the sun gods. He drives the chariot and that drags the big sun all across the sky. So Phaethon goes back to school, and the kids say, did you find out who your dad is? And Phaethon says, yes, I did. He's the sun god. And they say, no, he's not. Your daddy is not the sun god. Well, this hurts Phaethon's feelings. And he goes back to Clymene, his mother, and he says, Mom, did you tell me the truth? And she says, yes, I did. You go ask Helios about that. So Phaethon goes and finds Helios. How does he find Helios? I don't know. Like I said, not all these stories make an awful lot of sense, okay? Somehow, he finds Helios. And he says, Helios, do you remember a nymph off the shore of Ethiopia that you had sex with one time? And Helios says, well, there's been so many, but Clymene. Yes, I do remember. And Phaethon says, well, I'm your son. And Helios says, oh boy, because I have not been a very good father to all these children. I work too hard. All I do is drive my chariot all day long, and I've not played a major part in my child's life. None of my children's life. And Helios says, well, son, look, I'm sorry. I've not been a great dad to you. So, whatever you want, ask me and I'll give you whatever I want. Well, Phaethon says, Dad, give me the keys of the chariot and let me drive the chariot across the sky. Question. How many of you have been 16 years old? Most people get their driver's license around the age of 16. Some people wait a while. There's no rush. Please don't rush into it. If you are just 16, don't rush into it, okay? Take some time until you feel comfortable. But, what'd you do when you finally got your driver's license? Anyone here speed? Oops, can't get my hand into the... Anybody here speed? On almost every class, I ask, anybody here who got a speeding ticket within 1 month, 30 days of getting your driver's license? And there's almost always somebody who says, yeah, it was me, I did. What do? Mom and Dad say, be very careful. This is a powerful instrument. It can be a weapon. Be very careful. And you say, Mom and Dad, I took driver's ed, and I take this very seriously. And you pull out of the driveway, and 5 minutes later, you're doing donuts across the neighbor's yard. Okay. We've all been there. Phaethon gets in the chariot. He has no idea how to drive. And so he's just zooming the sun all over the sky. He doesn't know what he's doing. He flies to the north, and he goes way too high. He moves the sun way too far away from the north. And that's where the polar ice cap came from. And yes, these people knew there were polar ice caps. Okay, that's where the polar ice cap comes from. And then he figured out what he was doing, and so he turned around south to go back home, and overshot that. Ended up flying across the Sahara Desert way too low, burned up all the trees and all the lakes and rivers that used to be in the Sahara Desert. That's where the Sahara Desert comes from. Finally, everybody on Earth starts shouting up at Zeus and says, Zeus, you got to do something about this crazy kid in the chariot. And so Zeus finds a thunderbolt and throws it at Phaethon and kills him. The short, sad life of Phaethon. But you see the etiological function of the story. It explains where the polar ice caps came from. It explains where the Sahara Desert came from. And it's also a way for us to start looking at the animistic and anthropomorphic characteristics of the different generations of gods. And that's really what we're going to be looking at for a while.